Schön? We're doing the Zoom. What's that? What's going on over there?
We'll find out after.
Okay.
Obviously, we're not invited.
I verstehe das. Okay. Modim anachnu loch. Shlomo, ready? Allah v'aleim. Yeah. Modim anachnu loch. So this is the second of the final Amidah. So we said that Ritzei Modim Sim Shalom is Hamlech B'Choynach Ritzei. It's like departing. I'll say you have to depart before you leave the presence of a king or the presence of a rebbe. You depart. You say, I hope you enjoyed the conversation that I had. Ritzei is, I hope it was appeasing. We spoke last week, when we spoke about it. Ritzei is the idea that I hope it was appeasing. Ritzei Bam Chisol. And now we say, and thank you for the opportunity that we were able to talk to you. Thank you and then thank you, Modim anachnu loch. B'emes says Modim anachnu loch. Thank you for Modim anachnu loch. Sha'atu Hashem Elokeinu. Modim anachnu loch, that you're Sha'atu Hashem Elokeinu, that you're Hashem, you're our God. So the question is, in terms of kavanah, what does a person have to have intention specific? So Modim is interesting because in Modim, so the halach in Shulchan Aruch is that you have to have kavanah klalis. So that's obvious. You have to have kavanah klalis for Shemona Esrei. And if you don't have kavanah klalis, a general kavanah that you're standing in front of Hashem and you're davening, then you're not yoytze. But if you don't have kavanah, if you're missing kavanah pratius, specific kavanah, then you're still yoytze the mitzvah. You're still yoytze the mitzvah. Let's say the mitzvah of davening, of tefillah. But with regards to Shemona Esrei and Avos, you have to have kavanah pratius. You have to know exactly what you're saying. And if you don't, theoretically, you have to daven over Birchas Avos. L'poil, ha'idna, like there are more rules. This is Siman Kuf Aleph. Mispal tzarich chavim b'chol habrachos. V'im ein yochel lechavim b'kulam, l'pachis yechavim b'avos. That's the first. That l'chol ha'pachis you should have intention when you say Birchas Avos. The first bracha is Shemona Esrei, because remember if we spoke about this, we said that the first bracha is really the mashal of this, the metaphor of this would be that the first bracha is the address. If you make a mistake in an address, it's a problem. If you make a mistake in a number and an address, the mail's not going to get there. If you're writing a letter that you're requesting someone to give you money, and you're not so eloquent exactly what you say, but between the lines, the guy said shigelt, you figure out this is what you have to do. You have to send money. So the bakashas, even if it's not so clear and the kavanah was not so specific, it works. For the letter, it's going to work. But the address, you don't have the right address. You don't even know who you're addressing. That's you don't have the Mogen Avos, then you're not gonna. There's no connection. So if the address is this, so then that's the main thing is Avos. The Ramah says because if you're gonna go back and you say Avos again, who says you're gonna have intention again? So you're not gonna really gain anything by saying Avos. But certainly when you go into Shemona Esrei, at least you're going in with intention that you're gonna have intention at least for Avos. The Beis Yosef brings down a smak. Kosab is smak. And this is a chiddush. This doesn't say in Gemara. It doesn't say in other Rishonim. And what does this say? Im eine yochel lechaven b'chol habrachos yudches yechaven ba'avos u'modim. You shall at least have kavanah by avos and modim. If you mean yochel lechaven mishnei yechaven ba'avos, and if you can't do, you can at least do avos. But avos and modim. So Avos and Modim is like the beginning and the end. The Beis Yosef actually continued with Tzarech Talmud b'nayin l'dod of Modim tfei mishar brachas. How do you actually know that Modim is better? Okay, but there's shitza smak, and there's also a girsa of the Baal Rikeach, the way he's going to the Gemara, that Modim is also important. That you have to have kavanah specifically also for Modim, just as you have to specifically for kavanah intention for Avos. If you don't have specifically intention for Modim, you're not yotze in the mitzvah. You're not fulfilling the obligation. Why? Because if you're using the mashal that we said before, one is to write exactly the address. One is to say what you want, and then you need to put a stamp. You put postage. You need to put a stamp. So Modim is a stamp. So if you have a good address and you have a good request, the mail's going to get there. But if you don't have a postage, it's not going to get there. So this is, if you use this mashal, we'll say that Modim is the postage. So Modim is a very, very essential idea of the bracha. That you have to have specific intention. It's a long bracha. We'll try to understand a little bit what exactly this is. What's the intention?
It's interesting it doesn't say like Sim Shalom or something.
Sim Shalom is not mamish. We'll see when Sim Shalom. It's not. Sim Shalom is not Haidah. It's a sort of a bakasha once again. If you even read the word Sim Shalom, that Hashem should put Shalom on you. It's sort of that we should. Okay, we'll talk about it when we get to Sim Shalom. We have to talk about it. But it's a little different. These are the two things. This is you. You say, I hope you enjoy my presence. Let's say, and Modim Anachloch, thank you very much. And now you're leaving, and you're leaving. Basically, you're saying Sim Shalom is I want. In Bekitzer, Sim Shalom means I want your presence to be with me as I leave. So Shalom is one of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You say Sim Shalom. Put that this encounter should be a lasting encounter that I should actually continues to experience it throughout the day. So this is Modim. What is Modim? Modim simply means Haidah. What is Haidah? Haidah means, so again, the Avodah, different ways of reading Modim. Modim can be either Moida, like Moida Chacham, like I consent to your opinion. So I defer to you. I accept that your opinion is strong. Like there's a certain Haidah. Modim can also be thanks. Bahal Baidah. Haidah is a type of thanksgiving, right? So Modim can be a lot of things. But Modim, the tenua of Modim, the posture of Modim, and the way you're going to actually say Modim, is through bowing. So obviously over here, Modim is going to be some type of humility, bowing down. Exactly what you're doing we'll soon, but it's a type of humility of bowing down. B'chlal, there's a I don't know what to say it's machlekes, but there's two versions of in Likutei Torah and Torah from the Alter Rebbe. There's two versions. If Haidah, it's kind of this week's parsha. If Haidah is Yichudei Allah or your Haidah is Yichudei Tata. When the difference between a bracha and Haidah is Haidah higher when I'm submitting to you. I'm submitting. I'm surrendering. If you want to use that word, if I'm surrendering to you, does that mean that it's a collapse of the total I, my existence, and it's an idea of Yichudei Allah, upper unity, which upper unity means that there is no I, the loss of I within the great I, the loss of small I within the great I, whatever you want to translate this. Is that what Haidah is? Is Haidah that type of thing, a total collapse, or is Haidah a Yichudei Tata? Haidah means that I don't really understand, but I accept what you say is smarter. Or let's say you speak to someone about something you don't know about, not necessarily the person's smarter than you just happen to not know about it. You don't know exactly how you collect garbage. I'm assuming no one in this room knows how to do this. And you meet a garbage collector and says, "This is the way you do garbage collecting." You say, "Okay, I'll wait it to you. Whatever. This is the way you do it. I understand. Okay, I'm assuming that's the way you do it." So it's not a bittul. It's not like I submit my intellect to your way of understanding. It's like this thing I don't really understand. So it's more a tnua of Yichudei Tata.
But isn't it every time that there is a ishtachavoya?
So we're going to talk about what's the ishtachavoya. What's that type of bittul? Yeah, the ishtachavoya is bittul. What type of bittul? Is it a bittul mitzias or bittul ayash? That's really the question. Yeah, exactly. Bittul mitzias means I'm nothing. I'm emptied of things, and bittul ayash means I still exist. I'm submitting to something that's higher.
Also, why have different by Buddhist you have kriya and ishtachavoya?
Yeah.
And by Modim is only ishtachavoya. What is the difference?
Okay, we're gonna talk about that, Gavin. We're going to talk about that.
There's light. I see it's beautiful light.
Exactly. So the idea is why taka modim? This is like a good child. What's the difference between modim and baruch? It seems to be higher. So we have to understand what. Let's do another few Mar Makaimis over here. Then we'll get a little deeper. That modim. the Ilya Rabbah, but it's Bemis, it says already in the Avudram. He brings down, the Shulchan Aruch says, in general, when you listen to Chazaras HaShatz, and Bizman, when you listen to the repetition, but really, you're yoitze with Chazaras HaShatz, right? Originally that's what was done. That's you fulfill your obligation to say Shemad Esrei. So why only by Modim do you repeat what he says? How come when he says Baruch Aleinu, you don't say Baruch Aleinu? You say Rafeinu, you don't say Rafeinu. Why when you say Modim do you repeat Modim? So the Avudram and the Ilya Rabbah brings it down in the Lavush. It's not the custom to make a shliach, to make a messenger, to say thank you. The person can say, I never sent you. If you're asking a request, you can take a person that's taking the best possible person that knows to say the request. Chazaras HaShatz is the person that's davening the Amidah. He's the most learned person. Now it doesn't work the way, but it used to be this way. The Mechavan, the person that davened for the Shemona Esrei, the person that davened for the Amud, was the most learned person in the shul. That's why even I've told very recently, by the way, in the last maybe 100 years, it used to be, first of all, people don't have Sidurim, and certainly with Kavanos. If let's say the Rashash, in the shtibel of the Rashash was the Chazan. That was the whole word. He knew the Kavanos, and everyone was Yoitze in his Kavanos, which means that the person that was able to the Mechavan, he was the Chazan. So, Be'emes, you can be Yoitze with everything. A person says Baruch Aleinu, it says Baruch Aleinu. You're Yoitze the mitzvah through Baruch Aleinu. But by Modim, it says you have to be, every single person has to do this on his own. He says, because you can't send a shliach, but really it's something personal. I can send someone to ask a request for something from me, but I can't experience Modim like through somebody else. You need to do this on your own. Okay. So what's Modim? So what happened? So there's a whole thing over here we have to learn about, which is when a person is karei moedim. So Chazal say that you have to be karei, when you have to bow down for moedim, and the 18 bones from your vertebrae, from your chulias, from your spine, have to be showing. What's exactly the 18 is a kind of it's a Chazal version of the spine. Because our version of the spine. No, it's a different way of looking at the spine. There's how you look at today. You have 5 of the lumbar, and you have 12, and you have 7. There's different parts of the thing. It doesn't according to all calculations, you don't get to 18. Or else you say it's the 5, the 12, and the cervical parts. The first one, whatever. But the point is that Chazal are not really interested in the anatomy. That's clear. We're talking about some type of more spiritual thing. But the chai, like that's the life force of a person is his backbone, which holds him up. And during Modim, you have to bow down in a way that your spine will show from your back, which means like there's a humbling of the spine. So the spine is something that stands erect, something that stands upright, and through the process of Modim, you're bowing the spine. This is interesting. You're bowing the spine means you're humbling the spine. What does that mean? So the Gemara says in Baba Kama that if you can see your Mara Makom, if you can't, the Gemara says you can feel it. So the Gemara says that the Gemara talks about different things that turn into different things, some type of evolution of species. And the Gemara says that if you're not karei b'moedim, if you don't bow by moedim, then your spine will turn into a snake. And if you don't bow, so you have spine and snake. So you have the idea of the spine, and the spine should be standing upwards. The bowing down is the humbling of the spine. And 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 if you don't do this, you'll have the spine will turn into a snake. No, you're gonna stand like this?
Yeah, obviously. Dan get the gabe.
All right. Fine. Yeah, sit down. Lachashav Hashanim Nasa Shiddush Olam Lachashav Hashanim Nasa Nachash. That the shed, the spine of a person after 7 years becomes a snake. If you're not Korban Modim, then your spine will turn into a snake. Okay, what does this mean? What does it mean that your spine will turn into a snake? Okay. Do we know what's going on? Why this is happening, or this is time entertainment?
There's a man there that they must be.
Oh, they're pulling electric. Okay.
It's also by my house. My wife just texted me, so it's.
Oh, it's the whole neighborhood. Ah, okay, fine. Okay. So Tosa says,
I guess, huh? You never know.
so Tosa says, okay, so Tosa says like this. Like Korban Modim, Tosa says, she mitzvah, lefi she mitzvah lechroya. The mitzvah is to bow down. The Gemara also says in Brachas, which is interesting. So if you don't bow down, your spine turns into a snake. We have to understand what that means, but let's just say it like this. The Gemara says in Brachas that when you bow down, you're bowing down. So if you bow down, then somehow you break the idea of the snake, because if you don't bow down, your spine turns into a snake. So the snake is like a negative thing. And if you don't bow down, your spine turns into a snake. And if you do bow down, then it doesn't turn into a snake. But then Chazal also say something also interesting, which is that when you're oimid, when you go out of the bow, so you bow down your head, but when you're picking up your head, you should do it like a snake, kichavia. So what is the snake a positive thing or a negative thing? So Tosis doesn't address this issue. Tosis says that if you don't bow down and turn into a snake, is because it's midah keneged midah. You become a nachash because it's midah keneged midah, that you didn't bow down and get up like a snake, so therefore you turn into a snake. Okay, it's measure for measure. That's the first thing. Then Tosis says like this: Yesh Mefarshim. Let's say there's other commentators like this. The Medrash says yes, etzem b'shiddush al adam shemenu noitzar laselavei. There's a part of the shedra, there's a part of the spine, there's an idea which Chazal called the luz bone. That's a luz. So this luz bone is actually connected to the shedra. There's a machlokes exactly amongst the Rishonim where exactly the luz bone is. If it's a part of the front of the head or the back of the head. In the Bala Aruch, which is from the early Rishonim from Italy, Rav Pinson of Rome, wrote a sefer like explaining different ideas, like it's like a type of a dictionary, and he writes that it's a machlokes whether it's the top of the spine or the lower part of the spine, but there's a part of the spine that is called a luz bone. Again, how big it is and what it is exactly, that's not relevant. But there's a part of the body that's connected specifically to the spine that's immortal. That when it talks about Chiyas HaMeisim, there'll be a resurrection. The resurrection will happen from this luz bone. That's why it says, it doesn't say that it's not a Bria Chadasha, it'll be a resurrection of that body from this bone that's connected to the spine, to the top of the lower part of the spine. And this luz bone, this part of the bone, is ein eish yachal sarfai. It's impossible to reduce it. People say if you're cremated, you get off Chiyas HaMeisim. It has nothing to do because the medrash clear. This is the medrash. I'm Tosis quoting a medrash, but it says the medrash that the luz bone cannot be nisraf. It can be nimach through mayim. That's what the medrash says. So it's some type of, I don't know, atom, and maybe I don't know. It doesn't say the size. It could be, it could be the size of anything. Maybe it's DNA. I don't know what the medrash is talking about. But there's something in the body that there's a type of luz bone. And it's v'hashta. When this one, the Gemara says that if you don't bow down Modim, your spine will turn into a snake. Therefore, there won't be resurrection to the body. If you don't bow down Modim, then you won't have resurrection. So Tosfos says, "Vein svar leimer shin oinish gol kolkach shebeshvil oven zed kol yisol yashn chedel kolam haba." Because you didn't bow down Modim, you're not going to get Olam Haba. Olam Haba, you're not going to get the future world. The world of Olam Haba is Olam Atchia. If it's Olam Atchia, Olam Haba, not Gan Eden. Gan Eden is after 120. Olam Haba is in the future. Olam Haba is part of Tchias HaMeis. Tchias HaMeis is part of Olam Haba. It says you're not going to have Olam Haba because you didn't bow down Modim. Islam is stubborn. That's what Tosfos says.
What is
Nothing. No, he brings on the first pirish. Yesh Mefarshim. Tosfos goes with the first pirish that is Midah Keneged Midah. Nothing to do with Tchias HaMeis. Okay, that's the. I mean, we're just giving you the topic to see what's going on here. So Tosfos says that it's not mastabel. If you look at not the next one, the Mar Mokim afterwards, in the Zohar, so Parshas Mishpatim, the Zohar writes, it has a long arichas about this, and then the Zohar says, "Obar me'inu de loy kar b'modim." A person doesn't bow down b'modim. The kuchabrichu avid menay bar nachron begin the loy asver who gufa di dirk the bar nashav loy yakal om. That a person that will get into other different type of bodies, but he will not return back into this body, and he won't have tchias hamesim. Lo yakum lam. This so what the Tosfos says is lo mistaba. It doesn't make sense really. That for such a thing, the Zohar says that. The Zohar says if you don't bow down b'modim, your spine will turn into a snake. Whatever this means, we don't yet understand what these things mean. But just let's use the words. You bow into a snake, and therefore it will be eaten up, and it won't have resurrection. It won't become immortal. So there's something about Modim. There's a connection between Modim with the Nachash, with the snake, and somehow through bowing down Modim, a person achieves immortality or connects to immortality. And if you don't bow down Modim, then you're mortal. What does this mean? The Maramakim before this, the source before this, is the Ben Yoda. On that Gemara, lo karba Modim. So the Gemara says that if you don't bow down by Modim, your spine turns into a snake. This is could be understood according to the Arizal. The Arizal writes in Shachar Kabbalah. We're going to see soon the Sarif later on. That Bekriyas Modim, Moirid Tipos Hachsodim, your Moirid the Tipa, the seed of Chsodim, Derech Chuta Shedra. So through bowing down, what you're doing is you're taking from the top of your head, you're bowing. The bowing is creating hashpa, yerida, going down. This is by the I read all this. We learned this already before Barachata. Remember we learned in the beginning of Shemon Esrei. The Barachata is always to be moyer hashpa, to draw down. So when you're bowing down to moedim, you're drawing down hashpa of tipus chsadim that passes through the chut hashada, which passes through the spine. V'yadua chsadim nirmazu b'oisis hamayim. Chsadim, the kindness, the compassion. This flow represents water. It's 5 forms of chsadim. Therefore, if you go mem yud mem, which is the filling letters of the word mayim, is 100. Mem is 40. Vav dalad is 10. And then Yud Vav Daled is mem. I don't know how do you get to hay? He has to use the hay. Hamilu oisis moidim. Then a milu would be oisis of moidim. Moidim is 100.
It's not the gemati, it's the oisis.
It's so oisis, but it doesn't work with the oisis because Vav Daled is 10, and it's 40. It's 90. Okay. Zol Zayin. But this is what he says. So we're gonna say that it was correct. It's only a remez, anyways. That's not the point. I don't know exactly. It's not exactly a line, but let's say it's 100. But the point is that the Modim moire tipus achsadim. Through Modim, you're drawing down tipus achsadim. We're going to see what this means. Let's skip to the next paragraph. You do it. The opposite of water. I know. No. What do you mean?
The oisius of the milli of Mayim is Modim.
It's not.
Because it doesn't have a yid.
Oh, the oisius, not the gematria. Oh, that's what you said. The oisius. Yeah, correct. Oisius Modim. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so Modim, missing it. The Vav Daled. What's happening? The Vav Daled, man Vav Daled.
Modim. No, it's not. After
Yeah.
the Dalet, there's a yid. But it's missing.
Okay.
What's missing is gematria also.
Okay, so maybe that's the thing. It's missing the yud, not the gematria. Okay.
No, it's the tipa of the...
Okay, Ken Zayin. I don't know what he meant, but huh? It's a ksiv decree. Okay. Ki hepach hamayim shechsadim yesh ha'esh. The opposite of water is fire. Shu gvura v'din. This is gvur. This is passion. This is power, which is gvur and din and judgment. If you do a nachash misad eish, nachash is connected. The snake is connected to fire. L'chein amar Chazal, different Chazal tell us mishes chayv seifa today that there's no din seif. There's no dalad misses, but there's din seifa. There's a person will receive a burn. How would that happen? So you get the nachash will bite him, and sheba ares shaloi oisa seifa, and that's considered fire. So nachash is considered to the snake is connected to passion, to fire, and the idea of modim is to draw down chesed through the shedder, through the spine. So if you don't draw down the water from chesadim through bowing down by modim, then your spine, instead of being water or drawn water down to it, will be fire, and it'll be fire. It'll turn into a nachash. I don't know if this is adding any helping or not, or making it more complicated. But this is. So what's pshat?
Sounds like there's like an energy in it. Either
Exactly.
go one direction
Let's look at the Kaf HaChaim. We're just going to see some of the Mar Mekoyim, so we'll see what the Kaf HaChaim says. That remember the smack brings down that you should also mechaven by Ovis and by Modim. Says the Kaf HaChaim. The reason why you have to mechaven a Modim, so because if you don't mechaven, you don't have intention with Modim, then your spine will turn into a snake. Modim gematria meya. This is why the mistake. Modim is gematria meya. The metak that what's modim gematria meya? The metak, huh?
Who said that we don't have a mind?
Does he saying? No, the Kaf HaChaim is saying, yeah. In other words, he's saying this. Since it says the Gemara says if you don't, he's saying if you don't bow down, it turns to nachash. So he's saying, so therefore you should have a mind, because if you don't have a mind, that's a keilu, you didn't bow. So therefore you should be more intentional. Yeah, it doesn't say clearly. And then he says, moidim got the meya, the metakin abeis nunin. That moidim is metakin the two nuns. What's the two nuns of? What's the two nuns? So first of all, wait a second. First of all, the two nuns is obviously the two types of nachash. There's two types of nachash. There's a nachash aburiach, which is the straight standing snake, and there's nachash akalasan. There's a nachash that's the curled snake. So there are two types of snakes. If you look at the letter nun, which is actually spelled nun, with a vav, but nun, there's the nun. So the Gemara says in Brachas, the Gemara says that in Ashrei we don't say nun. Why? Because nun represents nefila, which means why does it represent nefila? Not only because nefila means to fall, because it's the word that starts with nun, but the actual nun, the letter nun, is a falling. The top of the nun is a falling letter. So it's like standing up, and then it has a little thing that's on top, which will represent something that's falling. It's also grammatically nun also falls out of letters. Let's say Yipol is Nafal really is the shoyesh of Yipol. right? To fall, nafal is the three-letter shoyesh for falling, but when you use it that he falls, you take out actually the nun, which is very unusual. Which means you take out a part of the shoyesh letters. Whatever, that's a grammatical thing. Correct. There's a nun. You take out the nun. Sometimes the nun actually is a falling away letter. But the idea of the nun, we'll talk about it this way, is that nun represents something that's falling. Falling is the nun that's a regular nun. And then there's a nun that stands upright, which is the nun habariach. Okay, so the two types of nuns. And obviously, very clearly, you'll see in the beginning of Shemanes, in the beginning of Modim, you're bowing down, which is one type of nun. And then when you're Omek Chaviyah, then when you're standing up, you're going to stand up. Right? By Modim and Achlov, then you're going to put your head up, and then you're going to stand straight up. So you're going from a falling nun, you're going from a falling nun to a straight nun. From the falling to the straight nun is the tikkun of the nun and the nun, which is Modim. Now, if you look also in places in the Balaskenim on the Parsha, this week's Parsha, so the Gemara says that Ma al tikra ma elamea. Now, what does Hashem want from you? Mea. Mea is mea brachas, 100 brachas. Says one of the Balatoises that the 100 brachas, which is David HaMelech was metaken, Kudikitrug, is connected to the two nuns. And he says that the reason is, the reason why we say Modim today is b'makim of the mea brachas. Let's say you don't have to say mea brachas. You don't have to. Then let's say you don't have a way to say the 100 brachas. But by saying Modim, you yoitza to say the 100 brachas. Now, what is the 100 brachas? Very, very simply, the 100 brachas means it's not a number, and it's not. What does the 100 brachas mean? The idea of the brachas means you're distributing brachas throughout the entire day. The number mea is like a full number, and we're saying you're constantly being grateful and thankful. That's what it means, mea brachas. You're in a tnua when you're saying 100 brachas b'chol yoim. You're in a tnua of modim anachnulach. That's the same thing. It's the same. It's equated. Yeah.
In the Kavana, the Vav goes to the Nun, and the Nun comes back to the Vav by Modim, right?
Yeah.
So there's two types of Nun, like the Hay going to the Nun and the Nun coming up to the Hay.
Yeah. Right.
So the two Nunim.
There's two Nunim. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's the two Nunim. Okay. Let's understand this a few steps at a time. First thing is like this. The Nachash. So you have an Eitz Adas, an Eitz Chaim. You have this the way the world exists within the Eitz Chaim, the tree of life, and in the tree of life, there's Chaim Nitzchim, is eternity, is immortality. After the Nachash caused them to eat from the Eitz Adas Tevera, which is the world of opposites, there was the B'yem Chochem and Weiss Thomas, that death entered into the world through eating from the Eitz Adas Tevera. Right? But who generated this idea? Who generated the eating Eitz Adas is the Nachash. So there was a world that existed with which a person was immortal, whatever that means. There was the world of Eitz Chaim, of eternity, immortal, and through eating from the tree of knowledge, we became mortal. We became physical, which means we died. When you say that there's etzem luz, there's a bone in the body that is immortal, meaning it's nitzchi. It's not destroyed. Nothing can, none of the ravages of time and fire and water can destroy it. Which means that there's an akuda within the body that's still nitzchi, that's still eternal. The akuda within the body that's still nitzchi is the luz. The luz is the Eitz HaChaim within you that's connected to the world of eternity. The Eitz HaChaim. So there's an akuda within your body. There's the body the way it exists in your form, which is dafke mortal, and you're going to die, and everything is tinik miachin noilan is maskalis yabish. We're constantly dying. There's a shedding of skin, etc. So there's a process of death, and then there's a part of us that's immortal. That's part of us that's nitzchi, that's eternal. That's the luz. So.
Physical part of us that's immortal?
As I state, physical. There's something physical within our DNA.
Not the neshama, not
No. It's part, and it's part connected to the spine. We'll see why, but it's connected to the spine, which is immortal, which is nitzchi. When in Chazal, the Gemara actually speaks in Shabbos of a city that was called Luz, and people were living forever. So Luz is like, but there's an idea. I think I quote this later, maybe from the Mar V'Shemesh. Yeah, it's a few pages. Kuf Lamed Vav. It's a few pages later. For the Mar V'Shemesh, he writes. There's a small part of the body that's called the luz. Didn't have pleasure in Eitzadas, for the tree of knowledge. It only has pleasure for Motzei Shabbos. That's the Beis Yosef. Actually, right? Many yitzchis amesim. But then he writes something nice. Which means that tzaddik is not only someone that has a luz bone, but the tzaddik, the enlightened person, becomes the etzem luz. He becomes immortal. Right? The tzaddik, the Chaim Nitzchim, you say about the Yaakov Avinu loy mes, that the loy mes, the idea of not dying, and the Moshe Rabbeinu is Maisa Nitzchim, something in the Nitzchi is that the tzaddik lives with the world of immortality, with eternity. And when a tzaddik lives with a level of eternity, you could say that his entire body becomes eternal. This is God that's the Moed Shemish writes this a little more clearly, but it's actually brought out already in Medrash Talpias, it's brought out this for him. But he writes his idea. Maybe I don't think he saw it, that other sefer, but it's a very geshmaka thing. This idea is also connected. The Shem Shul connects this idea with why do you say that tzaddikim, after many years, even after they pass away for many years, their body still remains intact. So he says it's the same nakuda, because the reason why bodies physically disintegrate, is because the wind goes to wind, earth goes to earth, all the elements, the same in the modern language, the elements return to the elements. Everything that goes back to its original elements. It's a recycling of everything goes back to this. This is the way it works. Everything goes back to its original source. So he says by a normal person, when they live in the world of pirud, the separation, which is Eitzadas Toivra separation, since they will live a world of pirud, the moment the atom meshamet b'kirbi, the meshamet b'kirbi, we learned last week in Kut Torah. The meshamet b'kirbi means the koyach of soiv kalam that's holding the neshama and the guf. That's why it's a mafli lasets. That the Ramah writes that when you say Ashiyotzi, it's a mafli lasets because that the body and it are being contained. There's a force in the universe that's actually physical. In theory, on a scientific level, your body should really blow apart. Really, everything, all the elements just return back to the elements. But there's a composite that's forcing your body to stay as one being. This is on a physical level and a metaphysical level. It says that, but once that koyach leaves you, the body disintegrates. He said when a person lives with achdus his whole life, he's always drawing into all different types of the nafshistik, different parts of himself. He's always drawing into the kudas hayichud. So when a person is drawing into the Kudas HaYichud, he's living like a luzbon his whole life. So therefore, his body is maintained for longer periods of time. Rather, the flip side of that, and that's why it brings out the Sefer Chassidim, it also happens with the Rasha Gomer. With the Rasha Gomer, it's the same thing. When you see a body that still exists after 100 years, either is a big tzaddik, either the opposite. Because the Rasha has the same way. It's all about being one dimension, focused. Either you're focused physically for positive things, or you can be focused for nonsense. If you're totally focused for every single koich of your nefesh is going towards one direction, you're automatically drawing your body into a singularity, and therefore it survives for longer periods of time. Okay, that's just on one, but we want to understand this more on an edel way, a more refined way. What we're saying is that there's the luz is connected to our eternity, our immortality, and that's the part of us that's connected to Eitz HaChaim. And the more we connect to this, the more we are connected to eternity. What's the opposite of that? The opposite of that is Eitzadas Toivra. What caused the Eitzadas Toivra? The Nachash, the story of the snake. We'll go step by step. The story of the snake is, what's the snake? The snake says, the Megala Mukas brings down, when it says Nachash Hashiani, is that the Yani is Yesh Ani. That the Nachash, the Madreg of Nachash, snake, means ego. But separate ego, not healthy ego, separate ego. So it's important to understand this. That the yeshus of ego that says, that's what the Safona says, that the nachash is the world of fantasy. That's koyach hadimion. Koyach hadimion is, what does the nachash say? The nachash says that Hashem knows that when you can eat from the Eitzadas, from the Eitz HaChaim, from the Eitzadas, you're going to be kelikim. You're going to be like gods. You're going to be very powerful. which is the world of fantasy. Fantasy is unrealistic expectations or imaginations, or sometimes beneficial, sometimes positive. It could also be negative. That's why it says Kiloi Nachash B'Yaakov. Kiloi Nachash B'Yaakov is deviations of like, I saw a cat walking in front of the street. What does a cat have to do with the black cat crossing my path? Is it going to make me a bad day? But if you believe, you subscribe to the world of the imaginative, fantastical universe of both demons and goblins and fairies as well, then you're entering into the world that you're a little bit not attached to the reality. So it's a koich hadimion. The koich hadimion, again, there's a rectified koich hadimion, which is another thing. This is the Rambam talks about in Nevuchim, which is when a person is as an adam is a roichav al sus, you're able to ride the imagination, which is a healthy thing, and a navi is someone that knows how to do that. Or the imagination rules you. Very different. A person that's living in imagination means you're using your creativity to say what I want to do in this world, and I use my imagination to imagine what the possible outcome. That's good.
I think like what's going on with UFOs now is very positive example to bring out what you're saying, which is the imaginative spirit that people are spending on that.
Yeah.
And the possibilities of that on a
Correct.
level is to this point of vision and whatever that means.
Correct.
Existence. That curiosity, making that part of us is more valuable. It's the same.
Is what?
It's the same curiosity.
Is what?
It's the same force, meaning that
Yes, it's the same idea. It's the same thing. It's the same idea, which is the world of like when you stop believing in one thing, you start believing in everything. That's the problem. So because people don't have belief systems, they start believing every single nonsense. That's the culture problem that we're living in. But this is the nachash. The nachash is like this strange world of fantasy, and it's ego driven, which is like very hubris. It's like I'm going to do it. I'm going to be like gods. This is what the nachash says. And in contrast, when Adam is created, so when he's created, when he's created, the Zohar says, the Medrash says that he says, let's go prostrate ourselves. Let's do Modim anachnu lach. So there was either Yeshus, the Yeshus, which is it's all about me, and it's all about me becomes then about fulfilling fantasies. And obviously, fantasies also can be other things that it's clear it's connected to. Or if it's about bittul, about humility, about service, it's idea of modim anachnu. So these are the two things. If you look at the Maral, the Snesh Tickle from the Maral, that's what the Maral says. That's what the Nukud of the Maral wants to say. The Maral says that shidduch shel adam nachash avashal nasa nachash. What does it mean? Hani lekar b'modim. Davar zeh ki hanachash u'hoyel became a skufa. V'nashem zkifa joyel b'tchil m'vega yimeis anu achi yimin v'koyf b'ikar. L'chein hakadosh zgal that v'davke shidduch is gifas adam k'shidduch l'chein shidduch shelo nasa nachash, which means what are you doing with your skifa, your stolzkeit, with your capabilities? If you're using your capabilities in a correct way, then that's something that's positive. If you're not using with humility, then your spine, which the Maral says, your back, your spine, like literally we say as a metaphor, your backbone turns into a snake, which means your gestalt, who you are. So that's one madrega, but it goes a little bit deeper. So there's the world of mess, which is death, and the world of tam, which is the opposite. Koloi nachash b'Yaakov, that you shouldn't be with deviations. Chazal say, Tom tim Hashem lekecha, that you shouldn't be shoyl by Huvir Shamayim, whatever, with all these things, right? So tam is the opposite of mess, right? It could either be in the world of death, in the world of fantasy, of negativity, or the world of positivity. Now, let's go into the oimik of this really what the nachash is. So on one level, the nachash represents the world of fantasy, the world of imagination, of negative imagination, etc. But the nachash also, the underlying thing, what the nachash really represents, is also that the Chazal also say this in their own way, is that the nachash was jealous of seeing, whatever this means, was jealous of seeing Adam and Chava together, being intimate. So the Nachash, or this idea of the snake, and connected to the spine, is particularly connected to Arayas. Particularly connected to the energy of the body that is a lot sometimes conflated with fantasy and connected to fantasy, but it's talking about this koyach of I don't know how to say this in the most sneerous way, but you all understand what I'm trying to say. So this idea of this koyach, the eros, if you wish to say it as a nice way, if you understand what that word means. So this is a koyach that every single person has, the koyach gavra of a person. Okay? And this obviously is connected to the spine. This is particularly connected to the spine. The Gemara says, there's a Tosfos. I mean, it's a pretty simple thing, but Tosfos actually writes this as well. The Gemara says that if you look at Nida Daf Yudal, the Gemara says that you shouldn't lie down on your back. You shouldn't sleep on your back. So Tosfos says the different reasons, because maybe Yodam Enochas Al Melasai, maybe because your hands are going to be in Yodam Askani, saying your hands will touch other places, and you'll have heat, or maybe the garments are going to fall upon you. You see Tosfos? Light, but then Tosfos says, yeah, light, aman denagya parkin. She yadam menachas al melasim mischamim, varashbam pirish begodav neifim la masim mischamim. Then he writes, v'oit shamati, kishrecha parkin mischamim hashedra, umachazei iskasha ever v'yavel dekari. That the shedra of the person, the spine of the person is connected specifically to the release of zera, which means, yeah, well, we're going to get this. We're going to get there. So the idea is that the spine is connected to the zera adam, to the semen, to the zera of the person. But where does it originate? So there's two origins. There's one is enkish al ladas, which means that it really originates from the mind. The mind triggers, which means it's either fantasy or not, whatever. Hopefully in a correct way. So the mind has a certain conception, and then the mind triggers the body, and then the body has a certain reaction. The way the movement works is that the way Chazal understand this, and we'll see soon also from Sefer Bar, and we can look at this Marmarakim also. Sefer Bar writes this also very clearly. Is that the nun, okay, here's going back to the idea of nun. You see Sefer Bar, Tzadi Gimel, page Tzadi Gimel, page Gimel, that the spine is connected to the letter nun. So we never made that connection clearly, but here's the Sefer Bar is making the connection that the nun is connected, which nun is nachash. That's Chazal say, right? So nun is connected to the spine. That really the moyach is ikir chut hasheda, which is the source of the chut hasheda, which Tosfos says is with mischamim and comes out carry. The source of that is really the moyach, and then misham hushayev tabint, and then it goes through the spine, and then it's passing through. So the spine of the person is actually the nun, which the head of the nun is going to be in the place of the moyach. The release of the nun, the final expression of the nun, is going to be in the place of zera. Okay, so there's two ways how this can happen. One is that it comes from above to below, which means it's a chosen, conscious, mindful choice to be in a certain situation, which means that the moyach triggers a reaction in the body. I'm not talking about a subconscious reaction, but a conscious reaction. You're choosing it, or it could be the other way around. It can actually come from again. It's not, everything has a moichin to it, but a very low level of moichin. But it comes from the world of fantasy, or from sensations, or something else. Which then the trigger, the movement is from below to above. The zera goes up to the moichin. What's a tzaddik? So look in the regular shara from the Dinavar. What's a tzaddik? The get of a tzaddik Tzaddik lo yitur adam yitur tzaddik afilu mikim kol yitur rak imu shalom b'bris Hashem karoi. A person could be shomer all the mitzvahs. I can do all Torah mitzvahs the whole day, but if he's not shomer habris, if not a person is not shomer habris, he he's not together with tzaddik. If he's not careful with this thing. And Raim Yosef tzaddik lo mitzinu Torah tzaddik kol kach mufursim rak b'Yosef li shalom b'desoyin habris. That tzaddik is the what tzaddik? 1 second. What something mamish to get?
Wouldn't work for any mitzvah. Let's say he's not no shomer the shatnas. He's also not tzaddik. What's the?
But no, because shomer habris is not a mitzvah. Where's a mitzvah? It's not a mitzvah. Where's it? It's not Isma Torah. There's no Isma Torah. According to the Bahag, there is. That's the one only Rishonim that says Isma Torah. But B'chal, it's not Isma Torah. And according to Zohar, it's worse than Isma Torah. But there's no Isma Torah clearly in it. Okay, so yeah, you had a good aura. No, I thought it was going to go into another whole thing because so this is the idea of a tzaddik. Tzaddik is that is shomer habris, which means that this line. Look at another shtickle Zohar. Zohar writes. Everything's going to come together. We're going to understand what Modim is soon. But let's get the pieces after we come together. The tzaddik, the ois tzaddik, the Akdama Sefer HaZohar. It's the next page, Akdol Ragu Yishara. From the left side. Tzaddik says like this. Tzaddik, Asi Yud Shma de Bris Kadisha V'Rachiv Olav. That the tzaddik is a yud that's a roichev al anun. You understand? Now, what is a tzaddik? A tzaddik is the yud that's riding on top of the nun. That's a tzaddik. And Gada, he also writes the lois hader ampin ba'ampin gavada. He said that the tzaddik, the yud directed is outside. They're not yet mechuber. That's the famous thing with the Kisvei Ari and Kisvei Aval and Chazon Ish. A big controversy, but it says it's a Zohar. And God, it's not. It's everyone. A lot of people thought it was original from Chassidim, and it started by but it's not true. We find they have Sefer Torah 700 years ago. They have the same thing. It's an old way to write a tzaddik is the reverse yud, but this comes from the Zohar. That's ampin b'ampin. Clearly, that's what the Zohar is saying. That you write the tzaddik with a yud. This idea is actually much more clear in a sefer called Magen Avraham from the Tisker Magen. The Tisker Magen is the next Makir writes like this. Ki yedua shebechinis yisoid niki bechinis shem yisoid tzaddik. Tzaddik is yisoid. That is with Zohar Kodesh, which we said now, the Tmuna is tzaddik hu yud roichev al nun kvufa. That's a yud that's roichev al nun kvufa. The yud bechinis chachma. Yud is chachma. Let's go back. Remember we talked about Yoyada, that yud is connected to mayim, to chsadim. So it's chachma. V'oyer chacham meir b'chol amidas chol oimos. Kam sham nichsham shal b'chol amidas lo shchina akdoisha shud b'soy nun kvufa nukva de Zohar. K'mo shayichad atachma tipishu b'tzir yud v'tu in the kares m'chuz b'roichev l'chachma. So what is the together of a tzaddik? The chachma is iyum moicha v'yoytze derech ha'chai chuli shebetheder liyasoy deis kodesh. Clear. That what is together of a tzaddik? The tzaddik is that the yud, the tip of the yud, is nimshach, is drawn down through the nun, which we said in Sefer HaBoyer, is the shadra. So you're bringing down from the yud of the koyach hamoichin from the place of the yud, going through the chut hashadra, which is the nacha, the nun, and then it comes out of the body. And then when it comes out of the body, that's one madrega. And when it comes in the correct way, that's a nun, that's a matukin. That's together of a tzaddik. Okay. Was weiter. Okay. We still have this. We have from the Kisari, and then we'll understand what this whole thing is. Reish Lamed Ches, Kvanas Amidah. So again, this is mamish the oasis of that Ben Yoyada quoted. That a day you're the vavi lo legabe hey lahor al nukva ve'en kan el kri achas oisot chut hashada chai chol in the bay. There's the 18 vertebrae. Shem chi v'chir b'milas modim k'dei lahor tipas achsadim der chut hashadra. You want to be mamshich the tipas achsadim through the chut hashadra. Hayer the moichin the zod hashadra l'sos al nukva the zivug, and it's going to the place of zivug and come in the correct manner. Okay. What this means is like this. there's physical energy in the body. The physical energy of the body is a koyach gashmi, a physical energy that a person has, that using this koyach you can create. It's a koyach ein soifius. It's one of the highest koyachs that a person has in this world, which is the koyach that a person, a male, could create, a female, you can create and create new life. Anytime there's a very high level of kedusha, a possibility of kedusha, that's why there's also the opposite. That's why every time there's a hilad, every time there's a birth, there's also tumah. Right? Every time there's a very high level of kedusha, there's also a possibility of a high level of the opposite. Which means that the koyach saklipa, the negative forces, have very strong sway to take this power, because the power is very strong available power. What is the tnu of Modim? The tnu of Modim apisoid is like this. And this is why Modim, the Nachash, is Gematria Moshiach. That the transformation of the Nachash can become Moshiach, the opposite. So it can either go to the worst extreme of Nefila, or it can come to the highest Madrega, which is Moshiach. Since the koyach of the procreative koyach of a person is a very, very powerful force, there's two ways how you could channel this, if you wish. One way is that the movement is from which is the idea of the nachash. What's the idea of the nachash? The nachash is an external voice to Adam Chava. That's also very important. It's an external voice. The world of fantasy and a world of imagination is the external allure, is the external world. Why do people, like you say, in the UFOs, but that's like a very simple example. Why are people into the world of fantasy, or people that have fantastical imaginations? It's the less you are attached to the reality, the more you're impressed by fantasy. And part of it inherent within fantasy is the seduction of the external world upon your consciousness. So you're walking down the street. Forget about if you're seeing something or being in a certain place. Just walking down the street. If there's two possibilities when you walk down the street. One is I am the controller of this narrative, and one is I am the recipient of this narrative. Right? There's two ways how you engage in this world. One is that I am deciding what I'm going to see and how I'm going to see it. And one is that the world around me decides for me what I should be seeing. And it has a certain narrative, a certain story, a certain image that's going to impress on me. When a person is living from the external to the internal, that's the gather of Nachash. That's what a Nachash means. That's why it's the world of fantasy. In that world, the external triggers the eternal, but the movement is not from your mind to the body, but the movement is directly to your body. And sometimes a person can be nichshel with his body. Even if a person is not nichshel with his body, is not nichshel with his body, if you take that raw koyach and you choose to draw it upwards, which is possible to do for those who know or don't know, it's not so relevant, but there's a whole systems of thought that people thought that they can do this. If you do it, you're taking this raw energy, you're drawing it up your spine, and you're allowing for a certain expression in the mind or a certain explosion in the mind, and that's actually terrible, because what you're doing is you're taking a koyach hatuma on its own and you're elevating into your consciousness, and that's the way you're having a release. So it seems like a much more refined way than actually having physically, which could be Zara Latalo, but it's a form of Zara Latalo in the Moyach, which is the movement up the spine. I don't want to get into this, but there's a whole sugi about this. It's not mamish, not relevant, and it's a shtikl avodah zara also. Like we're saying, it's avodah zara. What is Modim? Modim is like this. You're starting off and you're saying that I'm going to start with haidah to something that's transcendent of me. right? That's what moichin is. I'm having an awareness that there's something that's transcendent of me. There's a higher power. I'm going to understand that I want to be. Let's go submit ourselves to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, something that's bigger than me. And then I'm going to bring down from the moyach, I'm going to draw down that koyach, that quality, through the chut hashedra. And if I'm a tzaddik, it'll be even to the yud nukva. It'll be in a correct expression of physical expression with a person, in a healthy, like the Ramban writes in Igeres HaKodesh, that it's with b'makom haroi, im isha haroi, v'zman haroi. You do everything in the correct way. It's kodesh kodashim. It's the highest thing. It's Shir Hashem. That's when it's done through up, through down. That's the first thing. But then Chazal say you have to be modim, you have to be koirea to break that energy. This is the first madrega, because this is the skafia level. This is the breaking of it. The breaking of it is that doesn't control me. The world of fantasy doesn't control me. I'm a person that I understand my life. I'm choosing my life. Right? That's what you're saying. Right? That's what you're really saying. I'm in dialogue with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm living a higher existence, and I'm not a chaya like any other chaya in the world. That's the modim anach lach. But then you bow and you bring down the koyach from the moyach through the chut hashedra to the expression, from the yud to the nun. But then you oimed kechaviyah, then you get back up. What's the oimed kechaviyah? Here's where it gets, I don't want to say dangerous, but it could possibly be dangerous, is because here the next madrega is not to stop there, because Hashem doesn't want malachim. Hashem wants physical people. And in order to be a physical person, you have to use the visceral sensations of the body, the raw, visceral, reality, animal energy of your body for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You have to actually, after Modim, you have to able to be draw. You have to know how to draw it upwards. You can't just mishtach. If you're not mishtachava, then you turn into a nachash. You enter into the world of fantasy. You become mortal. You world in the fila, and you get sucked in. Clear, right? That's everyone understands that, right? In the world of fantasy, the next thing you know, you're like in fantasy land, and then you're living in the place of total mortality and the opposite of eternity. You don't have a spine. So the nun is the kriya of the first nun, is the bowing of the nun, which is the nefila, the positive nefila. But then your oimik chaviyah is you're making a straight erect nun. What you do with the erect nun is the nachash that now becomes metukan. This is a nachash that's already metukan, because now you're standing up kechaviyah, but you're taking that koyach that comes from the bottom of your belly, from the bottom of your spine, really, and you're drawing it upwards into your mind after already circulated from the top down. The Baal Shem says a Torah in Tzivos HaRivosh, and it's Samaches. And I thought it was interesting that it's Torah Samaches, because Samaches is Chaim. So in Torah Samaches, 68, the Tzivos HaRivosh was not done the diak that way, but everything is Bashkacha. That he says that a person that's to daven, ki'ilu, he's mezavig im Ashchina. And he says, just like a person does zivug, that a person is intimate. That in the first stages, there's tnuah, there's movement, so therefore a person moves when they daven, because it's mezavig im Ashchina. And the later stage, after you get into the state of yichud, there's no longer tnuah, so that's like the peak of Shemoneh Esrei. In the higher levels of Shemoneh Esrei, there's no more tnuah. This made a lot of, obviously people had a hard time understanding what Baal Shem said, and it was a big thing. But this is a very reina Baal Shem's Torah. This is an edel Torah of Baal Shem. It's very. It was taken historically. It went into very strange places. Not to speak about this, but there was a character called the Baal Shem of London. You ever heard of this character? So if you know William Blake, if you know some of the Chaver, that there was a whole genre of people that actually took the Torah of Baal Shem. It comes straight from Baal Shem, from the Magid. They try to teach it to knowledge. It went weird. It went very, very strange. But the Torah was, could you take that same visceral sensation, that Bahami sensation that you have, and convert it to Kedusha? Could you daven Shemoneh Esrei the same way? I'm not going to give you the nimshal of that. But could you daven Shemoneh Esrei the same way as if? Could you do that?
Enjoy a delicious steak.
But that's already. I'm talking about the biggest taiva that you can have. There was a younger man. I'm telling you, I don't know how to say the story correctly, but there was a young man, a very chassidish young man, like mamish, like a shtickle kaddish from Bar Park, once came to me crying that he davened Shemoneh Esrei with big dvekas. He's a yid, he's a dayan, he's a choshv yid, and he says he has kishri when he davens. He doesn't understand what's going on. And I learned with him the shtickle from Baal Shem. And I said, what you're actually doing is you're actually experiencing. He didn't know what he thought something was like. It doesn't. His body was so alive. You understand what happened to this person? This person was so Shemoneh Esrei was such a tainug. It wasn't that it was a tainug gashmi. He took mamish the bahami. He had the physical raw sensation like a lion. That raw, and he davened that way. He thought something was wrong. He didn't understand, and I'd learned with him some of the Torahs of Baal Shem. This is the higher koyach. So in other words, what Modim Anachnullah means, and this is why Modim Anachnullah is taka. I mean, it's all right. This is why Modim Anachnullah is called everything. It's on the Sechem Shechoyom, on Erev Avoikev Tzarayim. You're talking about every single transition of life, everything of life. Modim Anachnullah means I'm in a true of Eidah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in every single aspect of my life. And if you want to go to the darkest level, what Ari is saying, and what says it, if you look at all the stuff, this is the Kol Asor Maleim Bam. This is the kavanah of Modim Anachnullah, and why it turns into Chavia is I'm surrendering that koyach. I have control over this. I'm a bigger person because I'm living for a higher purpose, and I understand that I'm living for something that's much higher than me, and I'm living this way, and I have control over my life. That's Modim Anachnullah. It's not a nice Modim Anachnullah. Modim Anachnullah means I'm actually this is the way I'm living my life, and I recognize it. And then when you're down Modim, then you have to get up to the Chaviyah and say I want to schlep all the nachash, all the raw koiches that Eibusha gave me. And Eibusha made me a physical person, like every other physical person. I want to take all that koiches, and I want to be malit. I want to elevate this in a way. And this is the Kodim Moshiach. This is Moshiach. This is the elevation of even the world of fantasy, or the world of that sensation, that raw koyach to be transformed is actually Moshiach. That's the emissary redemption. Again, it's complicated. It's much more complicated to do it. And certainly to not to get farchapt, because you can get farchapt also. That's the whole problem, right? That's the problem is you get stuck in that world, and then it becomes whatever. It becomes like weird Frankist types of whatever. It becomes something strange. But the mucker of all these type of strange things that happened a few hundred years in times after the Baal Shem was all from the Torahs of Baal Shem and Magid, and fascinating. It actually leaped through many different cultures. And the Amidah and Magid that actually came to America, which is a whole other story. And you find this cross culturally where people understood this, didn't know how to use it correctly, didn't have the Modim Anachnullah, only understood the second part of the picture, tried to use it and got verfahren. So this is a very important dakas ticket Torah. V'amevin Yavin, the rest. So this is the Bekitzer. The last Marmokim, God is a sweet Marmokim, is from Kafak Toyers. The Kafak Toyers is a sefer that because we just had that the Modim is nun from the Kav Chaim brought it down, but this is from Yosef Taitetzak, who is a Rebbe, one of the Rebbes of the Beis Yosef. When the Beis Yosef went from Spain or from Bulgaria, he moved to Salonika. One of his Rebbes was Yosef Taitetzak. He was one of the big Goyim Gedolei Yisrael, and they found a sefer of his. Yosef Taitetzak is the same person that they had. The story in the Akdama of the Shalach Kaddish and Magid Nesharim with Beis Yosef is that story with Yosef Taitetzak. They go to their Rebbe, Yosef Taitetzak. So they found the sefer in a manuscript. It's a Pirush on Tillim. They just published it 2 years ago. A thick Pirush on Tillim. It's Mistaber, it's from him. There's a Machlokes, but I think if it's Mistaber, it's nice that it's a Svara. And it has some very interesting things that you see later on come out by the Beis Yosef and Arizal. So here he writes over here, it's Derech Agav of Derech Agav. But I remember I just underlined it, so I thought it was interesting. That that's the same word. That the nuns is actually the cheshbon mea, and that's altikim mea brachas is that's the whole thing of the nun skufa, and the nun kfufa. The nun kfufa is the falling nun, which is madrega of it can be negative, but it can also be positive, which is bittul, that I'm bowing down to create bittul. And then the nun skufa is that I'm elevating, kichavi, I'm elevating it back upwards, and then it becomes the nun nun, then it's modim anachnu lach. That's the nekuda of modim anachnu lach. Okay.
You can interpolate that the first noon is basically
Nachniyat, correct. Good, that's correct. The first one is the chna of it. He's saying which is the positive nefila. Pshat is machniyat positive nefila, the nun, and then I'm oimid, elevating it becomes a nun, and that's why Akav Lemishna becomes a nachash. Aklason it becomes a nachash b'riyach. It becomes a straight nun. The straight nun is the straightened out nun. The nun in its the nachash in its great posture, which is Moshiach. The dilemma.